Huge. Unbelievable. I'm watching the markets right now, which are on fire. Ladies and gentlemen, we're looking at a NASDAQ that's up about 10%, S&P trading up nearly 8%, Dow Jones Industrial Average up nearly 7%, and all on this little bit of news. You see, Donald Trump just came out moments ago, and he had a little bit of a something to offer China. You know, China, who's been coming back saying, well, you know, we don't like your tariffs, so we're going to put on 34% for you. And then we came back at 104%, and then China came back at 84%. Well, guess what? China is officially losing the #1 economy in the world, which would be the good old US of A, because now Donald Trump's putting a 125% tariff, a 125% tariff on China, while he's willing to put a 90-day hold on the rest of the world. So the rest of the world gets some reprieve. Let's take a look at his note. Based on the lack of respect that China has shown to the world's markets, I am hereby raising the tariff charged to China by the United States of America to 125%, effective immediately at some point. Hopefully in the future, he sends out on Truth Social, China will realize that the days of ripping off the good old US of A and other countries is no longer sustainable, nor is it acceptable. Conversely, and based on the fact that more than 75 countries have called representatives in the United States, including the Departments of Commerce, Secretary of Treasury, and the USTR, to negotiate a solution to the subjects being discussed relative to trade barriers, tariffs, currency manipulation, and the non-monetary tariffs, and the countries that have not, at my strong suggestion, retaliated in any way, shape, or form against the U.S., I have authorized a 90-day pause and a substantially lowered reciprocal tariff during this period of 10%, effective immediately. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Okay, this is huge, you guys. This is huge. And we're trying to still figure out like what this means for Europe, because don't forget Europe was trying to retaliate, right? They were one of the ones coming forward with the retaliation. Was it 20% that the EU was putting on? And then the EU came out and they were like, oh, all hunky-dory with none other than China? I said, whoa, guys, like, what do we spend? Like $1 billion defending you from Russia? And the minute push comes to shove, you're out the door and hanging out with China? I was like, good luck. You can take all their cheap crap. Fine. We are the #1 economy in the world. And when you are the #1 economy in the world and you are the world's largest consumer, guess what? When you say, hey, you know what, we ought to make a deal? Well, China, you ought to make a deal. He was generous. He left the door open there. But the Europeans, I'm kind of troubled by them. They're like the DEI, ESG kings and queens and whatever else they are over there. And the moment they had an opportunity to do the right thing and stand with the United States of America and say, we'll work through this together, instead they go running into China's arms, sending out statements about how they're going to work with China and work on green energy. Good luck, guys. You know, I wish you all the best. China, green energy, those things don't really go hand in hand. Meanwhile, I mean, there was talk of even more than 125%. So guess what? We put 125%. This is coming in addition to the original 67%. And then you had 104%. Now we have 125%. Oh, my friend Kevin O'Leary, good Irish name, will forgive the fact that he's from Canada. He was on CNN last night saying, hey, he wouldn't stop because, you know, these are bad guys. They do bad things and they don't play by the rules. So tariff them to the tune of 400%.
104% tariffs on China are not enough. I'm advocating 400%. I do business in China. They don't play by the rules. They've been in the WTO for decades. They have never abided by any of the rules they agreed to when they came in for decades. They cheat, they steal IP. I can't litigate in their courts. They take product, technology, they steal it, they manufacture it, and sell it back here. Never has an administration. 400% tariffs? What would that look like? I want Xi on an airplane to Washington to level the playing field. It's just not about tariffs anymore. Nobody has taken on China yet, not the Europeans, no administration for decades. As someone who actually does business there, I've had enough. I speak for millions of Americans who have IP that have been stolen by the Chinese. I have nothing against the Chinese people. They brought great literacy, art, and tech to the world. The government cheats and steals, and finally, an administration, you may not like Trump, you may not like his style or his rhetoric, finally, an administration that puts up and says enough. 400% tariffs tomorrow morning. He'll tell you why. Xi can only stay the supreme leader if people are employed. If we wipe out any business there, because we are still 39% of all consumables on Earth and 25% of the world's GDP, America is the #1 economy on Earth with all the cards. We will not have that forever. It's time to squeeze Chinese heads into the wall now.
Well,
I'm
hold
not
on
talking
a
about
second,
tariffs
Kevin.
on
Well,
60
I hear you, but hold on. If we're talking about people, the average consumer, not necessarily the head honchos of businesses all across the globe, can they withstand the pressure of that sort of tax on the goods?
It's short-lived. There will be.
But what's your timeline compared to, you don't know the average American's timeline, what they can actually survive. There's people right now who can't survive
400% tomorrow morning, cheese on an airplane to Washington to cut a deal.
Hey, Xi, you might want to check the flight schedules. Okay, listen, this is really quite something. And again, I just get back to the method to the madness, maybe have been an opportunity to explore who really actually would work with us and who wouldn't. China came out with a statement earlier today. I'm going to read it to you. U.S. flagpole guy, thank you so much. We appreciate the generosity. I'm going to get to your comment in a second. They said, we have wills and means to fight to the end. They warned us that the U.S. will, quote, reap what it sows. Okay, so they said this, and shortly thereafter, after we get this big warning from China, oh, you're going to reap what you sow. We got the wills and the means to play this out into the end. And then you got Europe coming through and backing them. I'm going to get to that because I'm just blown away that the people that are supposed to be our allies here are like, oh, we're standing with China. Unbelievable. China, who manipulates its currency. And I know people are like, oh, we deflate ours. Nothing compared to what China does. They steal our intellectual property. They make companies turn over parts of their IP. They have to have a certain number of employees that are from China. You have to invest a certain amount. They have all kinds of rules and regulation. And don't forget about it. You know what? You can't actually sue them in court. And the WTO is nowhere on it. So guess what? China's toast. They either cooperate like the developing nation they are. And I'd go so far as to say, they're even kind of getting out of that developing stage. Yet we're giving them concessions as though they're still coming up through the ranks. They're the #2 economy. No, China, you could actually join the big leagues. You got to play by the rules. And if you're not willing to play by the rules, then we don't really need you because guess what? We still have a lot of power. Check that Shanghai index out. It's been cratering the past 5 days. And listen, with news now that there's 125% tariff on all Chinese goods and no tariffs on anyone else, what you're doing is you're isolating China. You're strangling China. We don't need the silly crap from China. Excuse my French, but I got a little too much of it. I was just cleaning my closet this weekend and I'm like, this. Get rid of it all. We don't need to be buying this stuff. Granted, there are strategic reasons why, and this is, you've heard me say this, and if you follow me on Twitter, I don't want to do my dry cleaning, so I run a trade deficit with my dry cleaner. You can have strategical approaches to all of this. I don't think you should conflate all the trade deficits with, of course, the with the trade deficits with this sort of sense that somehow they're immediately taking advantage, because sometimes we're trying to take advantage of whatever they're offering as well. So tariffs and trade deficits are two different things. But I will say this, China is bad. They have done all kinds of stuff. Bessent out just saying this yesterday, Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, saying these guys are the worst. Like, we actually have to do something about them. It's now or never, folks. And it's now.
Thank you. Tariffs. It's been about a week since the president announced his plan. The reciprocal tariffs went into effect last night. And I know, and I've been reading.
I'm going to fast forward this a little bit to where he starts talking about what China does. Here we go.
With the Japanese delegation. But in terms of escalation, unfortunately, the biggest offender in the global trading system is China. And they're the only country who's escalated. And I can tell the rest of the world that, I'm not sure whether it was the Prime Minister or the Economic Minister in Spain made some comments this morning, oh, well, maybe we should align ourselves more with China. That would be cutting your own throat, because I can tell you that these Chinese exports that the U.S. tariff wall is going to keep out, that China, for all of you who can remember that Disney movie of the brooms carrying the buckets of water, that is the Chinese business model. It never stops. They just keep producing and producing and dumping, and it's going somewhere. And I think
and I think we need to actually speak up and do something soon. So the amazing thing is here, did you hear him reference Spain and how Spain's like, well, maybe we want to be on China's side? And I'm like, wow, you Europeans, you never cease to amaze me. You really never cease to amaze me. There's talk of 400% increase in China tariffs. That would really cut off trade. But I'll tell you, the 125% is going to do the exact same thing. And I'll just say this, you know what? They can't actually survive without us. There are 500 billion reasons why. All right, let's take a look at what the trade picture really looks like. Here we are looking at, these are actually 2023 numbers, so they've not been updated, but basically $500 billion in trade. Okay, that's what they're exporting to us. So we buy $500 billion worth of stuff. Who else comes close? Well, the EU. But look at that. No singular country. We are one country. The EU is not a country. And by the way, you know that EU breakup is coming sooner rather than later. Just saying, okay? I don't think that the South or the North appreciates paying for some of the liabilities of the South. We've seen all of that play out. You remember the Greek debt crisis? I mean, they're hanging on by a thread. They're hanging on by a thread there in Europe. And so altogether, they represent almost as much as us. We're in the midst of negotiations. Besant has said that. My sources tell me these negotiations are going well. In Japan, in South Korea, that'll all come through. I also hear that we're very focused on Southeast Asia. So guess what? We surround China. And if the Europeans are stupid enough, and believe me, they are stupid. These people are the ones that, kind of came up with all the ESG and the DEI nonsense, and they think it's great to just work 4 days a week. If they're stupid enough to keep, importing everybody from the Middle East and everybody from Africa, it cannot assimilate into their country, that become major liabilities for them, then guess what? You know what? You guys go for it. You want to love on China? You want to have your love fest? You go do that. You see how that works out for you. It won't. Meanwhile, we're doing smart things back here at home, like taking back our Panama, well, not our. I'm going to be careful about that. I only say that because I'm like a Monroe Doctrine kind of girl, and, we live in America, and you got Panama there in our hemisphere that I think, given that we built this thing, we ought to still have a fair amount of say over. The Chinese have infiltrated it. You go down to Panama, everybody speaks Chinese. I used to go to a Chinese restaurant on the Upper West Side of Manhattan, and it was really kind of weird because you'd walk in and everybody was really and truly Chinese, and yet they all spoke Spanish. Yours truly is fluent in Spanish, so I always got a kick out of that. And it was because they were from Panama, because the Chinese have completely infiltrated all of Panama for the Panama Canal. We're getting it back.
To be very clear, China did not build this canal. China does not operate this canal. And China will not weaponize this canal. Together with Panama in the lead, we will keep the canal secure and available for all nations through the deterrent power of the strongest, most effective, and most lethal fighting force in the world. We will do this in partnership with Panama. Together, we will take back the Panama Canal from China's influence. And we will do this along with other capable, like-minded allies and partners. This is what peace through strength looks like.
This is amazing. Just amazing. If you're just joining us right now, Donald Trump has said he's announcing a 90-day moratorium as we get all these trade deals together with the people that are willing to negotiate with us. For those that just wanted to slap on reciprocal tariffs, he's got no use for them, and he's hitting China with 125% effective immediately. In other words, the Chinese economy is toast. You heard what Kevin O'Leary was saying earlier in the show. This is an economy that is really kind of fragile right now. And Xi's political position is fragile as a result of where that economy is. So if you don't have enough incoming so that people can keep making all the cheap trinkets that they're exporting all over the world, then what happens? You're going to suffer. And that's why when you look at Shanghai markets, they've been down, they've been getting crushed, all while our markets, as we speak, are soaring. But I think that, you got to think this one through if you're China. And granted, they're, so conceited, and they have a certain view of themselves, and they don't want to look like, we're giving in to Trump. We can't give in to Trump. Well, you can do that all day long, but, you're going to have to just keep flooding the market with your currency. You're going to keep printing and printing and printing. That's going to depress the value of your currency. Your people are going to be unhappy because they got no economy, because the US of A is really and truly taking over. And frankly, China isn't going to be able to look to Europe to really replace us. That's a lot of money that they got to replace. A lot. And if we're not going to do business with them, they're going to do business with Europe? Meanwhile, one source is telling me that his view on this is that, in fact, the EU is being treated a bit like China. So this just coming in right now, I would just say, who needs enemies when you got friends like they seem to show us we have in Brussels? So no sooner did China come out saying what it intended to do, right? Like they made the point that, well, we're not gonna play this game, and we're gonna fight until the end. And that we have the will and we have the means to do that, and that the U.S. should just reap what it sows, that the EU then said they were going to increase tariffs on us. So the EU listens to this. They say, well, we're upping our tariffs, and we're going to pledge our support to China and work with them on green energy deals. You cannot make it up. I'll tell you, Besant was right, when he heard from Spain of all places. And Spain was like, oh, yeah, we'll work with the Chinese, and we'll pick up where the U.S. is leaving off. Well, again, I think that these people are absolutely delusional. Absolutely delusional. You really want, here we go. The European side is looking forward to holding a new EU-China leaders meeting at an appropriate time to review the past, look into the future, and jointly celebrate the 50th anniversary of EU-China diplomatic relations. This is according to the woman who's in charge there in Brussels, von der Leyen. She went on to say the European side is willing to promote high-level dialogue with China in various fields and deepen mutually beneficial cooperation such as our economy, trade, green economy, and, wait for it, climate change. So the EU is like, oh, we're going to get to work with China on climate change. And we don't care about the U.S. We're going to tariff the U.S. because China's our friend now, despite the fact that we are the only reason, frankly, you're one, not speaking German, every single one of you, and two, the reason why you had some kind of defense mechanism against Russia. So when push comes to shove, you're shutting us out of the picture? I don't think so. I think that Donald Trump is not going to forget that. I think Donald Trump knows, I know exactly who my friends are. I know exactly who my foes are. And I'm going to think about that, because I just don't need people like this. When you're head over heels falling for China, we're going to wish you well. So Donald Trump sent something out just moments before all this went down. It's funny because, he actually also said the day before the bottom in the market back in April 2020, hey, it's a great time to buy, go buy. Interestingly, he said that again just a couple hours before this deal was announced. So I guess we all need to go to Truth Social and follow it. But what did I tell you last night, right? What have we been saying? How do you invest amid all this volatility? And I said, it's easy to get worked up about everything. It just is. And look, you see my Twitter feed and it's like a stream of consciousness because I'm going, wait a second. Oh my gosh, you got the bond market imploding. You get this, that, and the other. And I try and caution people by saying, I am going to just tell you, I still invest in all of it, right? What is the moral of the story here? That even when the chips are down, and I realize a lot of people think it's going to get a lot worse, and we can't call the bottom here. You just can't call the bottom, but you can say things are starting to look attractive, very attractive. So when you look at that PE ratio, right, coming way, way, way down, we've now effectively recovered what we lost since Liberation Day, but in seeing that massive and very forced sell-off and the VIX trading at 45 and higher, that's when I'm saying, as a rational person, you've got to ignore the noise and take advantage of the opportunity, provided you can, right? I mean, you have to have sort of the bandwidth to be able to do that, the liquidity to be able to do that. You don't want to use the kids' college savings or your vacation money even, or maybe you want to use your vacation money, I don't know. I call it your Vegas money, like money that you really don't need. That's when you actually want to start going in. And so this is the notes we've been putting out over and over again at 76research.com. That's my financial research company. We actually put out a note last night saying, he will do this. He will put a 90-day hold on things so that, because, it's a lot. Think about all those deals you got to negotiate. Besant's pretty busy and we're well sourced and we understand this stuff and we've been doing it long enough. So we put out a note saying, look, in light of what we expect to happen, which is this 90-day sort of pause on the ones that want to do deals, then you might want to be looking at having broad exposure, including to some specific names, right? Because we have a lot of companies in our portfolio that have done really well. I encourage you guys, go look at these 76portfolios.com. I mean, granted, of course, you can get the 76 report with code word dollar, but if you're looking to actually shore things up and get some investments in a time like this, I do encourage you to look at those names, 10 to 15 stocks in each one of those portfolios, because now it's kind of important, right? We're going to still have volatility. I'm going to stress that. So there's still going to be opportunity. This is not like, we're out of the woods yet, because now you still got to get down and get nitty gritty, and we're going to be living through all these headlines. But the basic premise here, it holds. And that is that China has been doing all kinds of stuff for way too long, and this has got to stop. The Europeans, they could join us, but they got their head up there, what, right? With their green energy, climate change nonsense, and DEI and ESG, and they can't see the forest for the trees. And they don't seem to understand that, guess what? China does not care about any of it. China really doesn't care. So that's who you want to do business with. Give me a break. Here's Trump talking just yesterday on why this is important right now.
We've been ripped off and abused by countries for many years with the tariff situation. They've used tariffs against us. We didn't use tariffs against them or in any way. I mean, we just didn't use them of any monumental proportion. And so we are doing it now.
We're doing it now because it's like now or never. All right. So the European Union, they may not benefit from this 90-day. We'll see how this all shakes out. I was just looking at European markets that are traded here, and they seem to be holding on okay. But again, one of my sources telling me that he did not believe that actually this would include a pause for Europe, because Europe was coming through with these additional tariffs. We'll see what that sort of shakes out to be. But the reality, ladies and gentlemen, is that we know it's almost like this, there's this like test. It's like, who are my friends? Who are my allies? Or not even that, like who really wants to be in business with us? Because we've done all kinds of things for Europe, and there was an opportunity for them to, kind of work with us. And yet they chose not to. The very, very, specifically today, making a choice here to not play ball. And I just don't think that ends well for them. I don't think it ends well for China. I think we'll be okay. We'll be okay. But Donald Trump, speaking on a lot of things, in an event last night, calling on the House GOP to get the tax cuts done, saying that, immigration and deportations are very much front of center still on his mind. But as for the deals, he said, look, we have people coming forward and they're saying, please allow some kind of deal forward to happen. And I think that he responded to that. But if the Europeans, they would rather be in bed with China, then let them go sleep with China. Okay? That I don't really have much else to say to them other than, if you guys were smart, you would have broken yourself up a long time ago, because this is not going to work. And guess, who's going to be mad if they actually do all kinds of deals with China? It's going to be like textile manufacturers in Portugal. Like all they've already been hurt by the EU. If they actually have new trade deals they're going to have to deal with some internal pushback from some of those countries. I kid you not. You're not going to be able to replace the U.S.'s business, EU, with China's business, nor should you want to. For goodness sakes. All right, the financial media is totally panicking, right? They have been panicking. They've been like, oh my God, the sky is falling. Now, why is that? Why does the media do that? And look, I'm going to be perfectly honest. When I get nitty gritty into the details of things and I start talking about the bond markets, and I don't do that a lot necessarily in this show, but sometimes on my Twitter feed I do, it's because you are actually trying to send a message of sorts. Things were starting to get a little bit broken. The problem with the financial media and the mainstream media, which is obviously terrible, just turn into The View any given day of the week, all of the media wants him to lose, right? They want him to, so they're like cheering this on. The whole, I'm looking at it, I'm like, this is getting really weird. Like when Elizabeth Warren is defending Wall Street, when all the people that were about Occupy Wall Street are now suddenly defending Wall Street, like we're living in some kind of upside down world. But the important thing as an investor is to just keep your sanity about you, right? So you get worried, you say, okay, well, this doesn't really look good. The 10-year yield is creeping higher. That could mean recession, and I'm still not counting recession out. I mean, look, we were heading potentially towards a recession anyway because these things are cyclical, and you look at things like Las Vegas bookings that happened even in the month of March, and they were already showing this decline, this year-over-year decline. So there are a lot of reasons to believe that people were already kind of scaling back. Did this push it along? Possibly. But the hysteria sort of, breeds more hysteria. And so when these people are so hysterical, and you look at the Wall Street Journal, and you look at the New York Times, and you look at the Financial Times, and every publication out there, and you go to CNBC, where Jim Cramer is telling you you're going to have a 1987 moment. I believe he said that, and the market went up that day. I was like, yeah, you know what? I buy in that 1987 moment. That's what I do, because even if it's starting to get broken and you can't catch a falling knife, it could go down lower. I know Don is super bearish, but you know what? I'm an investor that has to put money to work. Where else am I going to put it? I'm not going to put it in China, for goodness sakes. I'm not going to put it in Europe, for goodness sakes. So where do you put it? You try to take opportunities as they come, unless, of course, you work at The View.
Well, first of all, in order to kiss his ass, you have to get Mike Johnson out of the way. That's number one. Number two, what is his exact plan is what I want to know. Yeah. I was home, I had a cold yesterday, so I was home watching everything. And I'm thinking, he's trying to destroy the country. Now, why is he doing that? Just as a person in the audience, like, watching this. Yeah. So there's a couple of theories.
Yes. And
like, what's... Yeah, first of all, if he tanks the entire, what do you call it?
Economy,
the stock market, then all his billionaire friends can swoop in and buy everything low. That's not an original idea. That's Hakeem Jeffries said that. And the other thing, and in fact, today on Truth Social, Trump wrote, a great time to buy. The other theory is from James Carville, which I think is interesting, that he wants to stoke such instability and chaos to consolidate power for himself so that people start to really go nuts, which we're starting to.
No, we're not.
Well, people are starting to get mad.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
You want them to get mad.
But how mad will people get, and how broke will people get, and how many jobs will be lost? And then he can say, well, there's too much chaos, and now we're going to have martial law in this country, and he becomes a dictator. I mean, I don't know. That may be out of the bounds.
Anything is possible.
But it's possible.
Yeah.
So somebody watching the news, that's what I see.
So first of all, she didn't even know what it was called. She's like the what do you call it? The stock market. Okay, the stock market. So she has this theory. This is the theory on The View that somehow he is driving the market lower so that he and his cronies can come in and buy. Of course, he did actually send out a tweet or a truth, whatever you want to call it, saying, now's a really good time to buy. He did send that out, and she's worked up about that. And I'm like, well, Joy, like if he knew something was coming and he tried to communicate it to you and you just are too stupid to read the tea leaves, I guess. But the point is you've got a media that's hysterical to the point where they're now advancing these conspiracy theories, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All right, look, the guy has been passionate about trade, and whether you believe that is great or misguided, just leave that alone for a second. This is something that he has cared about for like 30 years. So he actually does want to make some changes, especially vis-a-vis China, because they are the worst offender of all. And you know what? We can go back and we can watch Nancy Pelosi. Maybe we should, because you know what? Nancy Pelosi was telling us this how many years ago? I mean, we heard Chuck Schumer talking about this how many years ago? All of these guys seemingly once cared about this stuff. And then all of a sudden, once it's Donald Trump's idea, they decide to leave it by the wayside. Think about how disturbing that is in and of itself, right? They completely abandon their values, abandon their sensibility because they don't like the messenger. They don't like the guy delivering the news. I mean, here we got Chucky sounding a lot like Elon Musk and Donald Trump put together on this one. He's talking about, oh no, this is better. Let me show you Nancy Pelosi, guys. Nancy Pelosi, back in the day, this would have been, I think, in 1997. Here she is.
In terms of tariffs, I think it's interesting to note that the average U.S. MFN tariff on Chinese goods coming into the United States is 2%, whereas the average Chinese MFN tariff on U.S. goods going into China is 35%. Is that reciprocal? In terms of jobs, this is the biggest and cruelest hoax of all. The China trade supports 170,000 jobs in the United States, 170,000 jobs, whereas our imports from China support 10 million jobs at least. The fact is that U.S.-China trade is a job loser.
I think she could get a job in the Trump administration. Right? So, I mean, this is not like new. We've known this for a long time. The Democrats have been very outspoken about this. China takes advantage. And we used to look away because we're like, oh, they're a developing country, they're coming up through the ranks, so we're not going to subject them to the same rules. We have all these rules about coal and the ozone layer, and we're going to ignore it in China because they ought to be able to do things that we did 100 years ago. And then people are, maybe we got to get them to comply some more. I'll tell you, it's really sort of amazing. The pass that these guys are given are they paid for that? I kind of wonder. We know Hunter was. I got a kick out of how Hunter Biden, the whole Biden family was always like green energy, green energy, green energy, except, of course, when it came to Hunter's deals, he was all about the old-fashioned kind for China. I mean, he had one guy who apparently had all kinds of connections to the CCP, hand-delivering him a diamond, like a raw diamond, at a dinner in Florida. That's Hunter Biden for you. Then he's getting money from Romania, from Ukraine, all for natural gas energy deals. Because it's fine for the rest of the world. Well, you know what? It's not. Like, it's just not. Like, that is not fair. That is not right. We are where we are today. China, put your big boy pants on and join the party, or don't. because we don't need you. And so the media freaks out and the media panics, and you have selling, and then you have more selling and more selling. And what the media is trying to do, in fairness to some of my friends that still work in it, they may be trying to communicate to the Treasury Department, to the administration, that this is getting serious. Now, the markets, on the other hand, they don't really care about communicating anything. They're not like trying to punish Trump for anything. The markets are just like trading. And when you get a report card, like the market trading down 1,000 points, that's not really good. But I don't like the pile-on effect. And the other thing I don't like is that people get scared. And I just go back to this, you're an everyday investor. You need to think about how you're approaching your investments right now. My mother's like worried, right? She's worried, and she isn't necessarily a Trump fan to begin with. So it's like the prophecy's coming true. So she's like, what do I do? Should I be? And I'm like, do not sell in the middle of a major crisis. Like, you either sold before, but you don't sell in the thick of it, right? She took my advice, fortunately. She also took my advice on a few other things over the years, including, let's get a shout out for one of our great sponsors here on the program, our friends at American Hartford Gold. I said, like 20 years ago, I really think you need to buy gold. And there was pushback, and I was like, no, I really think you need to buy gold. And you know what? Gold beat the S&P. In a 20-year time period. That was actually even before Liberation Day. We found that out. The gold projections are somewhere around 3,300 from Goldman Sachs for this year. I had one person tell me, if this gets really crazy, unfortunately, I don't think it will, but you could see gold even go north of that. I don't look at gold as something that I trade in and out of. I just buy gold and I hold it. And so I'll preface this with that. This is not a like buy now and, next week it's going to be up X%. I'm just telling you it's a good thing to have in your portfolio. It's something we actually talk about at 76 Research as well. So right now there's a special offer for fans of the show. Go to trishlovesgold.com. You get up to $15,000 in free silver, 1-844-495-1115. You can text Trish to 65532. 65532. Let me take a look at gold right now. It's possible that people are trading out of gold at this given moment because they want to go back into stocks. It's also possible that they're like, okay, we're gearing up for a volatile, few weeks or few months here. 90 days. So the VIX is going to be exploding for the next 90 days. And so as I look at gold right now, it's actually trading up. It's trading up almost 3%. So that's pretty significant, guys. That actually surprises me. I would have thought that maybe people were doing a rotation out, but I think that there's still sort of a sense that you might have some inflation. You might have some countries splintering off. So central banks are like, I want gold. And that's what this is about. Anyway, back to story at hand here. I'm blown away. I'm super positive on this. I'm super positive because I think that what this shows you is that Donald Trump has a method to his madness. This is not complete chaos, as some on The View would like to think. This is actually something that is being thought out. Scott Bessent tweeting out just moments ago something extraordinarily positive. Let me see if I can pull it back up about the president. And look, Scott's a bright guy. And I've had my moments where I get a little bit nervous because it seems like Peter Navarro's taken over the show. And Peter has, it's like one view, and he doesn't necessarily appreciate the full, dare I say, complexity of everything. You know the Elon thing, Elon versus Peter. Elon thinks he's a complete moron. But I would just say that in terms of Bessent, he's making the point now that this is a brilliant president. Quote, as I've said in the past, no one creates leverage for himself like President Trump. So he's now got everybody exactly where he wants them. China doesn't play by the rules. China's got a 125% tariff. Europeans, they just showed us their hand. So the Europeans are suddenly persona non grata. I realize a lot of people are like, oh, no, there are allies. I'm like, yeah, there are allies. But hey, when push comes to shove and China's like, F you, USA, they're like running and scrambling to say, well, we can do a deal with China. And yeah, F you, the USA. Well, I don't think you guys have that hand to play. I don't, because your economy is not strong enough. We still are the only game in town. So we use that leverage while we have it. In the meantime, yes, there are people that are worried. If I look at, for example, Polymarket, or there's a few, Kalshi is another one, these betting markets that are looking at whether or not you have odds of a U.S. recession. I just want to see if it came down on Polymarket at all. Polymarket is a good real-time indicator of what markets are thinking, and they've been looking at this U.S. recession odd. Boom! Oh my gosh, this is great news. Let me see if I can get this on for you. I'm very, very pleased to see this. Look at this chart. I'm going to show you. We were up approaching a 70% chance, you guys. People on Polymarket were betting that there was definitely a chance of a recession, and guess what? Those recession fears are actually being mitigated. So I'm going to show you this chart because this is important to see. And this just shows you the value of what he just did. Amazing, amazing, brilliant stuff. Here we are looking at Polymarket. So the reason I wanted to show you this is because, and I realize this shot is looking a little bit funky, but that's okay. Okay, so Polymarket, this is real-time data, is showing us that, you see that, can you see the decline? That we are now somewhere around 47% chance of recession. That is less than, the 50%, so that's good. But we had been up at almost 70%, just moments ago. And you even had Jamie Dimon going on with my good friend Maria. I can't say enough good stuff about her. She's really just a wonderful person, and someone who I've had the pleasure to work with for many years, both at CNBC and at Fox Business. Here's Jamie Dimon, who I do have a tremendous amount of respect for, talking about whether or not we're going to get a recession with Maria just this morning. And he's like, yeah, I think it could happen. And I think we'd see defaults and this, that, and the other. But maybe this was the message they were trying to get to Trump. Not that he needed it. I think he was kind of 5 steps ahead. Here we go.
How significant a slowdown? I mean, are you seeing defaults?
Not yet, but I expect them. And the other thing, which we haven't had any slowdown or real recession, and COVID was so short, I almost don't include it, and so long that if you have rates going up a little bit, and inflation is sticky, and credit spreads are gapping out, which they're going to, I think you'll see more credit problems than people have seen in a long time.
And yet, you got to get ahead of it and cut expenses now. You've talked about the 10% to all of your different groups at J.P. Morgan. Yeah. You say J.P. Morgan's going to be fine, but we could see a softening of the macro story.
Yeah. So JP Morgan, I did say to the JP Morgan people, the 10%, but I think we just got a little sloppy in the last 5 years. I'm kind of mad at myself. I remind people, what kills companies is complacency, arrogance, bureaucracy. And that little speech I gave, I was talking about Sears and AMP and Eastman Kodak. And it's amazing to me that these companies, they just get too lax in what they do. And we got a little bit of that too. So we're going back to killing bureaucracy. We put some headcount controls in place, not because we're not doing well, not forcing people to cut. I call it just like going for your run and eating your spinach. It's not a big deal. We can handle that, and we'll become a better company. People are having a lot of fun, by the way, raising their hand and saying, why are we doing this? Why can we cut this out? And whatever they're with me, I say, just do it. Go ahead. You got my permission.
So are you hearing that from CEOs as well in terms?
Okay, so this is an important question. He just told her, look, we've been cutting back on expenses because we want to be as nimble as we possibly can be because we don't know what's coming. And he's trying to kind of, pat himself on the back. We're so smart. We're so nimble, blah, blah, blah. But she gets to the heart of the matter, which is, are you not the only one? Like, are you hearing this from other folks too?
Of business managers, are they now going to start pulling it in and cutting back on various expenses?
I think you're going to see a little bit of that, yes. Yeah.
But how significant would you expect that? Do you personally expect a recession?
I am going to defer to my economists at this point, but I think probably that's a likely outcome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because markets, when you see a 2,000 point decline, it sort of feeds on itself, doesn't it? Because it makes you feel like you're losing money in your 401k, you're losing money in your pension. You got to cut back.
Yeah. I always remind people markets aren't always right, but sometimes they are right. And I think this time they are right because they're just pricing in uncertainty at the macro level and uncertainty at the micro level, at the actual company level. And then how it affects consumer sentiment, it's hard to tell. Consumers still have jobs. Wages are going up at the low end, which I think is a good thing. But if companies start cutting back, the consumer sentiment changes and business sentiment changes. I think you've already seen business sentiment change a little bit. Hopefully, no one's wishing for that, but hopefully if there is one, it'll be short. But I do think fixing these tariff issues and trade issues would be a good thing to do. That will get one major uncertainty behind us. We have the strongest economy in the world. It would be good not to add to the uncertainty out there.
How long would you wait to see these fixes take place?
I don't know. I mean, I would, whatever they can do, like I said, trade is really complicated. I mean, these trade agreements are thousands of pages long. It is product by product and area by area, non-trade barriers, subsidies. There's tons of food. If you spend time with just food alone, you'd be shocked how many different food agreements there are and disagreements and protection of local farmers, which almost every country does. So the sooner, the better.
Well, we get 90 days. I'm going to change this because I think oil prices are rallying right now. This, look, this news just came out just as soon as we were coming to air. I mean, it's really sort of just incredible how quickly this is all moving. And it's incredible how Donald Trump has the ability, frankly, to shift it all around, right, with just a little tweet. But Maria made a good point there, and she gets it, and it's what I tell you all the time. Selling begets selling. The media gets into a state of panic, and then it causes everybody. I mean, I sometimes talk about my son on the show because he has a little trading account with his allowance that I oversee for him. But, he has it on his phone, and so he looks at it. It's like one of those Robinhood accounts. And he's like freaking out. He's like, Mom, I'm losing money. And he feels really good when it's going up because he's like, Mom, look, I made money. And he has this sense that, you know what? When I'm making money, I feel better about everything. And I can see it on his face. And I'm like, oh, honey. My point being that I'm telling you the same thing that I tell to my son. I'm like, Jamie, you know what? You got to take the good with the bad. And as long as you're in it for the long haul, you can afford to put a little of that extra money. He's been saving his money for a long time. He saves every penny, and he puts it now into the market. And I said, look, you're going to have to be able to stomach the ups and the downs, and don't worry. Like when you have bad days, you just don't look, and whatever you do, don't pay any attention to the financial media that's going to try and talk you off a cliff. Maria's responsible. Not everybody else is. Okay, not everybody else is. They're looking for ratings. They know that if they have blood on the screen at CNBC, at Bloomberg, and maybe people will be tuning in. And that's part of the whole problem here. So are we going to get a recession? I don't know. I think if you get 90 days of trade deals, you're going to be in a way better position. Meanwhile, there's lots of other stuff going on, is there not? We got a huge Supreme Court victory that went through, and guess what? Kristi Noem is already out on the case. They say at the Supreme Court that, yes, you can use the 1798 deportations law for now. Kristi's taking advantage of it, getting in kind of a skirmish there about somebody's Crocs. This is hard to hear, so I'll translate.
You know why we're picking you up today?
You know why we're picking you up today?
You do understand?
You do understand?
Charges against you?
You know the charges against you. Do you understand the charges against you?
You're going to be prosecuted.
You're going to be prosecuted.
You're going to be prosecuted.
She says it again.
We don't commit crimes in our country. Yeah, you're scaring me with your Crocs.
Yeah. Just something about the Crocs. Like, get your Crocs out of the way. And so the guy's wearing Crocs, and Kristi's calling him out, and she's got something behind her now. She's got the 1798 Deportation Act. As much as Judge Boasberg wanted to get rid of that thing, the Supreme Court said, you know what? You have the power. Because I get back to this. For goodness sakes, if there's one power that the U.S. has at a federal level, it's to control borders, for goodness sakes. Who are these people that think that they can interfere with the federal government's ability to control its borders? Come on.
You cannot have a democracy where single individual district court judges can assume the full total powers of the commander-in-chief. Even on the Supreme Court, it takes agreement of 5 Supreme Court justices to change a federal policy. 5. A single district court judge out of 700 cannot set policy for the entire nation, let alone on national security and public safety issues. The president has been clear that he has tremendous respect for Justice Roberts and believes it's essential the Supreme Court crack down and stop this assault on our democracy from these radical, rogue judges that are usurping the powers of the presidency and laying waste to our entire constitutional system.
Yeah, you tell him, Stephen. Anyway, because they're allowing now the 1798 Alien Enemies Act, Kristi Noem's out there doing her job. Tom Homan is out doing his job. And they're all freaking out in Congress. They're literally freaking out. I mean, to the point where you're like, guys, I want to go back in time for a little moment. Let's go back to 2015 and that show that we all love to hate, The View. Do you remember when Kelly Osbourne, I actually didn't remember this. One of my team members jogged my memory today and said, do you remember when Kelly Osbourne was actually kicked off The View? And she came out recently and said this is one of her biggest regrets because she talked about something that, well, Jasmine Crockett is talking about like on steroids, but she got in huge trouble back in 2015. Watch.
If you kick every Latino out of this country, then who is going to be cleaning your toilet, Donald Trump?
Oh, that's no.
In the sense that, you know what I mean?
So you couldn't say that. But for some reason, Jasmine Crockett, the representative from the great state of Texas, don't ask me how she got elected there. Leslie, you got to work on that. We know, gerrymandering. Anyway, Jasmine Crockett is out saying this.
So I had to go around the country and educate people about what immigrants do for this country or the fact that we are a country of immigrants.
Right.
The fact is, ain't none of y'all trying to go and farm right now. Okay, so I'm lying. Raise your hands. You're not. We done picking cotton. We are. You can't pay us enough to find a plantation.
I know that's right.
Anybody else see what's wrong with that? Kelly Osbourne, all upset. Back in the day, 2015, she couldn't say that, and now suddenly Jasmine's like fine with it? Come on. Because they are trying to find any which way they can to justify people being here illegally. Somehow now it's totally fine. And if they have to say, well, it's to clean toilets or to pick cotton, they're completely fine with that. Like there's no sort of decency left in any of these people. And I was looking at something today from another one of these members of the squad. Is Crockett a member of the squad yet? I don't know if she's officially come out that way. But you had Representative Jayapal trying to say that, illegal immigrants, they make us safer here in the U.S. And I'm like, really? Because the last I checked, you had over 500,000 who are actually known to be having homicide concerns on their, rap sheets and sexual assault. And somehow they make us safer. Here she is.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I said in my opening, there are a lot of reasons why states and localities have adopted policies to leave immigration enforcement to federal government where it belongs. For some, it's about fostering trust with local communities. When immigrant communities know that calling 911 won't result in deportation for themselves or a family member, they are actually more willing to report and help law enforcement solve crimes, which makes all of us safer. For others, it's an important factor is legal liability. Courts all over the country, just to counter what my good colleague from Arizona said, have ruled that when local law enforcement complies with civil immigration detainer requests, and to be clear, an immigration detainer is a request, and continues to detain someone pursuant to a detainer when they otherwise would have been released, it's actually an unlawful detention, and it's a violation of the Fourth Amendment.
Well, you know what? Sorry, Jayapal. Things are changing. And this is a good chart. Look at the chart I'm showing you right now. This is the immigration chart. January 2000 through February 2025. Don't you actually want fewer illegal people coming here? Apparently not if you're Jayapal. No, because, well, they had some ulterior motive. They had a big ulterior motive. Take a look at the thing right above my shoulder there. New York State's top court just had to block New York City from allowing non-citizen voting because they had 800,000 people that they had imported into the state of New York, into New York City. They were putting up at the Roosevelt Hotel and others, where you got daily maid service and a nice little voucher. No, like a credit card that you could use for food to the tune of more than $300 a week. Wow. I mean, who wouldn't want to come here, right? Who wouldn't want to come here? Well, now those days are over, so you see why that number is plunging. And it's going to continue plunging. And you know what? States that are doing this are in violation of the law. Pam Bondi is suing New York, along with Illinois. And they have cut off the funding to all of New York because they're not going to pay for all of these federally funded programs. They were using your taxpayer dollars. If you live in Texas or you live in Maryland or you live in anywhere in the United States of America, you're getting taxed at the federal level, and they're sending it to New York to cover ethnically appropriate groceries. Like, that makes any sense at all, but apparently to the woke, it does, right? To the woke, they say, well, we have to make this legal because otherwise they may not call 911. You know what? Like, maybe we ought to have some fundamental changes so that people are coming here legally instead of illegally. I realize that that's completely radical, and apparently I'm like a right-wing nut when I say something like this, but it used to be that way, right? Like, we had legal immigration that we were trying to encourage and illegal immigration that we were not trying to encourage until the Democrats tried to figure out they could gerrymander their way into new election cycles. Whoa, boy, Letitia is losing it. Letitia James, who basically has been a pioneer in this field, she melted down on Friday at Rev Sharpton's big event, completely loses it, misquoting scripture, and like just goes off just ahead of the ruling that was about to come down. Because you see what happened? She does not have access to those federal funds anymore, and I won't say it. Watch.
Again, I apologize. Listen, 57 years after the assassination of Dr. King, and Dr. King talked about that stone of hope. And it's that stone of hope that gives me a fire in my belly each and every morning. It's that stone of hope that allows me to wake up and to stand to Donald Trump and to say, Donald Trump, I'm not afraid of you. It's that stone of hope. It's that stone of hope that gives me power. That's that stone of hope and the belief in each and every one of you to let you know that I'm not going to allow my ancestors, all of those who died for me to be in this position, I am not going to disgrace them and disappoint them. I am going to use the law both as a sword and as a shield and challenge Donald Trump. And each and every time he issues an illegal executive order, I am going to stand up to him because he represents to me sincere ignorance and conscientious stupidity.
Well, she represents, let's be very clear, corruption and stupidity.
Sincere ignorance and conscientious stupidity. And so DEI, as far as I am concerned, is more than about just black people. Let's be honest.
That's right.
DEI is about paid parental leave. DEI is about disabled children. DEI includes a number of categories. So when they talk about DEI, let them know that they're not only coming after us, but they're coming after all of us. And we've got to stand together, a stand in community, stand with this great organization under the leadership of our civil rights leader, Reverend Al Sharpton, who has been a light.
Who has been a pinnacle of corruption himself to the tune of $500,000 that MSNBC still hasn't gotten rid of him for?
A bright and shining light in the darkness. But I don't know about you. It's that stone of hope that inspires me each and every day. And Listen, faith and fear can never share the same space. And so I'm covered by the blood. And I'm not afraid of Donald Trump. You can come after me, but no enemy, nothing formed against me will perish. Nothing formed against me. Nothing formed against me. Nothing formed against me.
That's hard to take, I know. Look at their, you go girl, they're trying to tell her. Rev Sharpton, all impressed.
And you thought you could preach, huh?
Letitia's not happy. She lost. She's lost a lot of money, and guess what? All her DEI programs, like those are coming to a halt. They're coming to a halt because she is, ladies and gentlemen, she is basically the pinnacle of what you don't want being in charge as Attorney General. She's Attorney General, and she has used this. She has used this in so many ways to strike back and to hurt the United States of America by hurting our belief and faith in the system, right? In the system. And that is indeed a huge issue, a huge problem. And I got to tell you, this is not okay. She's got to pay the price. I'm still waiting on these judges. You know that? I'm still waiting on these judges because they have, at the Court of Appeals, what do they have before them? They have an opportunity to make this right. They have an opportunity to send this thing out. And yet that hasn't happened. And that is really, really concerning. I want to see if I can take you now to some breaking news that we're just getting in. Some breaking news. Let me see. I'm gonna show you this. I believe we can do this right here on Twitter. Let's listen in to Besant speaking.
And you will be rewarded. So every country in the world who wants to...
I tried to do that, but it didn't work. I tried to do that, but it did not work. I think you might have actually seen my text, including my text. Did that go through with my good friend Rob at 76 Research? Let's see. We'll try this again. I think I have so many things on my screen that it was making it impossible for you to actually see what I really wanted you to see, which was Besant speaking on all of this right now. I'll tell you, Letitia, forget about Letitia. This is my son probably calling to say, Mom, the market's up, right? Hey, honey, we're live on the air. Everything good? I just wanted to say the market's up. I told you, I was literally telling the viewers moments ago about how you are all over this. So I was saying I'm probably going to get a call from my son saying, wow, and you made a lot of money, right? Well, I'm happy. I hope a lot of people made, and that's why you don't sell. That is why you never sell in the middle of it. So Jamie, thanks for the ring. I love you too. I knew it. I knew as soon as you got out of school, I would be hearing about how excited he was about the market turning around. So that's why I say, it's what I tell him. It's what I tell everyone. You've got to keep a clear head about you in moments of stress like this. You've got to make sure that you are still dollar cost averaging in if you can. You do not stop, right? You do not stop just because of what may be happening in any given moment where there's some fragility or some concern, because if you do, you're effectively saying, I'm betting against the USA. And you know me, I'm not about to do that. So I think that as we look at what's happening here, we just saw that Scott Bessent was speaking at the White House, and we're seeing that the Trump administration, we've got now the press secretary speaking as well. They're just giving some more information here on what they're doing vis-a-vis the 125% increase in tariffs on China. 125%, but they're isolating China. They're isolating China, and that in and of itself, I think, is a successful move, good strategy. Let me go back to what Besant was saying moments ago, and we're gonna go and listen to the president as well as soon as he begins. But again, here is Scott Besant. Take a listen, everyone. This is actually just amazing what's happening.
As you see it now, this trade war is China versus the rest of the world.
Well, I'm not calling it a trade war, but I'm saying that China has escalated, and President Trump responded very courageously to that.
Very courageously. Unlike the EU, which said we're going to up tariffs on you, we're going to pledge our support to China, and we're going to work on green energy with China. Well, guess what? Europeans, you go do that, okay? You go do that all day long. But here we are in an open stock market where, as I said, it's not too often that you have a day like today. I guess it's good for a kid to start investing right about now to see all of this. Unbelievable, unbelievable. The Dow Jones Industrial Average up nearly 7%. The S&P up 8%. The NASDAQ up 10.42%. Taking a look at things like Bitcoin right now. You've got Bitcoin moving higher. You've got a lot of cryptos all moving higher amid all of this optimism. So this is really something to watch and see in real time. How quickly he can turn it around. I mean, think about the different sort of day and age in which we live. Bitcoin now, let's see, maybe actually Bitcoin is not. I saw it up around 80 something. Have you guys been following it? I know Don doesn't like that either, but nonetheless, I'm also, for various reasons we can talk about another time, a big Bitcoin bull long term. It's at 82,170. So again, it had been down as far as 74,000. So this is quite a turnaround to see. Very, very good news for the markets. And bad news for the left. More bad news for them. Anyway, another big story that we're keeping an eye on today, and this doesn't quite have the same maybe appeal as what we're seeing on the market front, but I got to tell you, I think the Obamas are just done. I think they are completely, totally done. Michelle Obama apparently breaking her silence on these divorce rumors. So if you've been following any of this, she's got a really, really bad podcast. And a lot of people thought that maybe that was her last-ditch effort to kind of do something. I don't know what the podcast is about. Some people think that maybe she actually wants to run for president, God help us. But she's out there doing this podcast, which is just an abomination, total abomination. I mean, she's ranked 34 on Spotify, and that's like with all the marketing money you could possibly put at this thing, and it's still doing lousy because nobody cares. Nobody wants to hear from him. This is the title the other day there in the New York Post. It's a total dud with listeners. But this is what's interesting to me here now. In addition to the ratings being just awful, apparently she's trying to hit back at some of these rumors out there because everybody's talking about how she and Barack are breaking up. I mean, she kind of just takes every opportunity she can on her little show there to give him a dig, including admitting that he doesn't know the first thing about finance. Good thing he's not still in charge right now.
Would you be attracted to a guy who's not financially sound when you meet him?
I married one.
Don't you like that alley-oop I just threw you?
Mm-hmm. So, she wants to make sure that she gets a little dig in there. I would just say I wouldn't really want him running all this tariff drama. I mean, well, he did for a while, right? And look where it got us. Now, finally, you get somebody in there who knows what they're doing. Michelle Obama's ratings, they are tanking. So in addition to her ratings being a disaster, all the news about one Jennifer Aniston, which apparently is just total fiction. And I guess it was on like Us Weekly or In Touch, one of those like supermarket tabloids. It was so bad that she had to go on Jimmy Kimmel's show and say, no, that's not true. I don't have anything to do with Barack. Totally not true. Well, all of these rumors have heated up to the point where now former First Lady Michelle Obama has to hit back. And she went on this Sophia Bush's podcast, Apparently everybody has a podcast these days. Not all of them are successful. That's because they don't have people like you watching. After the Obamas were dogged by gossip that their marriage was on the rocks, she opted to skip several high-profile events earlier this year, including President Trump's inauguration. Yeah, I mean, how do you skip an inauguration? I realize, Michelle, you're really selfish, but you skipped the inauguration. You are part of history, lady. The other thing that she did was she skipped Jimmy Carter's funeral. Now, if you're a Democrat, Jimmy Carter's kind of like a superstar. I mean, Jimmy Carter is the one who went on the ledge for you and said that Donald Trump wasn't a legitimate president, right? You had him to thank for that, at least. And then everybody could say, well, he's not a legitimate president. It's Jimmy Carter. You owed him something, Michelle, don't you think? Apparently not. She said she was on an extended vacation in Hawaii and she was not going to go to Jimmy Carter's funeral. To which I thought one of two things. Either she's ill or she's getting a divorce. I mean, the third alternative is that she's just an insanely selfish person that cares about nothing. But I actually think it's more sort of one or two. She's either very ill or she's getting a divorce. We know that she's not ill, which leaves she's getting a divorce. I mean, I kind of think it's very strange that you're trashing your spouse repetitively. I'm not sure where that gets you. If you have political aspirations, what's that about? I don't think America really wants to hear about how tough things are for you and Barack Barry. So she spoke on this podcast and she was upset about all the gossip, of course. And she wants you to know that no, they're fine. They're totally fine. She said, the interesting thing is that, quote, when I say no, for the most part, people are like, I get it and I'm okay. And then there's this thing that we struggle with as women. We struggle with disappointing people so much so that they couldn't even fathom that I was making a choice for myself, that they had to assume that my husband and I are divorcing. She went on to scoff at widespread speculation that they had called it quits on their 3-decade union, noting that it was unbelievable to some that she could possibly, quote, be a grown woman just making a set of decisions for herself. Clearly bad decisions, right? Very, very bad decisions. I'll say it again. Bad decisions for yourself, bad decisions for the country. And you know what? You don't have to take my word for it. You just look at those ratings you got going on, girl, and you can see it was a very bad decision. Anyway, somebody else that made some bad decisions, that would be that Meghan Markle. It's like sort of like watching this symbiotic thing, right? Two very untalented people getting out there trying to do podcasts simultaneously, both teaming up actually pour Spotify with Spotify and both sinking the place. Okay, they're really stinking up the joint there because Michelle's doing lousy with her ratings, and then you get this Meghan Markle who wants you to know it is very serious that Donald Trump is putting in tariffs. How dare he? Her whole little apple orchard thing, whatever that... What was that company? I can't even remember the company that she had. She's trying to be like Martha Stewart 2.0. It's going to sink because she needs to actually get all the cheap stuff from China, because actually all she's doing is sticking her name on it in a fancy ribbon and a label and calling it her own. But it's still just the cheap. I won't say the word. We're keeping it clean, okay? It's cheap, you know what, from China. Well, her ratings are tanking too. And I guess she deserves it. Anyway, this is just an unbelievable day. We're getting ready to close out the market. I got to say, it's going to be an incredible week. I do want you to buckle up. I want you to be very aware of the ups and downs that you're going to have. This is what I get the conversation I'm going to have with my son later, right? You know, things go up, things go down. And as long as you're committed for the long term, you will. History has proven this. You will make money in time. You will do so. It's why I encourage you to go again and look at 76 Research, how to invest amid this volatility. We have a whole guide there. We're walking you through it. Rob, I was just texting with him. And he's actually sending over something to me that I got to look at right now. We're going to put out another note. So that's all there for you. It's just using code word dollar. Go to 76research.com. If you want names, go look at our portfolios, because we have 3 different portfolios that really, 2 of them are designed to weather the storm. The other is to capture the growth opportunity. And then, of course, you know how much I love gold. TrishLovesGold.com, our friends over at American Heart for Gold. We thank them for their sponsorship here on the show, up to $15,000 for friends of the Trish Regan Show. If you go to TrishLovesGold.com, enter your email or call them, text them. Text Trish to 65532 or call them at 1-844-495-1115. This is amazing, you guys. Lots for us to talk about, lots for us to think about. I don't want you to panic. I don't want you to do what too many, the panicans, he's using that term. It's kind of funny. I just want you to remember, China's toast. We're going to get through this. It's going to be great. I promise, on the other side, but it will have its hiccups along the way. We'll deal with it, and we will emerge stronger as a nation. I will see you back here on the show live tomorrow. We got much more in terms of content coming your way. Thank you for everything you do to make this a success.